it's not a surprise to me when I'm up in Canada. We did get some Canadian officials that showed up at the show that wanted to see it run. We invited the state of Arizona, every one of the departments we could get a hold of, the air quality control boards. We got a hold of the governor's office, and there is zero interest.
The problem with Canada is usually our government won't act on something until they see it kind of get the stamp of approval of the state, then we'll.
Yeah. It's very similar here as far as you really have to have a catastrophe before they'll start to move. They don't want to see this type of technology out. About 2 hours ago, I got a call from a gentleman who's flying in. He's getting on a plane right now from Canada. He's on his way down. A friend of William Shatner. And he called William quite a while back and told him about me. He got to see the engine run in Los Angeles, and he wants one for his car. But when he heard that we ran the lawnmower out here, totally closed loop the other day, with no exhaust coming out of it at all, and no air going into the engine at all, just exhaust, he told this guy to get on the next plane, get down to where Paul's going to be tomorrow, and look at it. And if it does work, you make arrangements for Paul to be on the Jay Leno show. I'll be doing the introduction. I want him down here as fast as possible. So it's been an exciting morning, folks. I needed that because Shatner wants to invite Larry Hagman and 17, 18 other people to come to his home to see it at his home first. So been waiting for these days for a long time. Okay, who's playing with the lights? For the last 7, 8 years, we've been hounded by people from all over the world. When are you going to offer stock? When are you going to offer stock? Well, I spoke to my office yesterday, and they informed me that we cannot open the school in that little building we were signing a lease on. To begin with, the gentleman got greedy and raised his rent on the building from $3,000 to $6,000. And he also now wants 10% of our profits. Well, that was enough of a shock, but when they called me, they said, Paul, we've had over 400 people want to come to the first week or two of school. We've got shops calling from Europe. They want to send in 30 to 50 people. They want every mechanic in their shop qualified to put it on. He said, Paul, this blew up a lot bigger than you thought it did. So with that in mind, we were planning the first class to be about 10 to 15 people. We've got 4 sign-ups so far at this show. After this, if nobody else signs up, it's up on the website immediately today that it's first come, first served, and the first class is going to be about 15 people. The second class will be larger. They have located, late Saturday, they located a school, or Friday, I'm sorry, vocational school in Salt Lake that had closed down 2 or 3 years ago. It is ideal for what we need, and we could handle up to 300 or 400 students a week. In the last 3 days that have wanted to purchase as many as 150 to 200 lawnmowers in one shot. So the next week or two is going to be very expanding for GEET. The GEET site is going to be updated constantly, so you'll hopefully daily be able to find out what we grew today. As far as stock, I'm only going to be offering stock, let's see, it's 10,000 shares as minimum purchase at $2.50 a share. If anybody in here wants to, give me a talk right after we're done here. I don't anticipate that offer being available more than 72 hours. Shatner's men, when he called me back to say he's flying in, he's going to be on the next plane to get to Salt Lake as soon as I'm done here. He said, whatever shares do not sell by the time I get there, if he can see the closed-loop engine run, he says they are sold. So we're only trying to raise that $1 million we needed to get that school open, the new school, the bigger school, open on time. Because it's going to require a lot of work now that we weren't planning on. We already had 3 analyzers. We had 3 sets of tools, 3 of this, 10 of this, and all of a sudden, it just mushroomed. So you'll have to be patient with us on some of this expansion. I don't know how fast we can get all the analyzers and the mass spectrometer and all the other test equipment. But we got people all over Salt Lake, one after another, joining in saying, hey, don't worry about a paycheck for a week or two. I can come in right now. I can help. I can get this stuff for you. So we've got people running all over Salt Lake right now, picking up equipment for us. And they're putting it in storage rooms because they were ready to put it in the building, and they're going, wait a minute, building's too small. Now what? So we have put together a team now. All the resumes of each one of the people on our new team will be posted Monday or Tuesday on the internet. We're bringing in scientists from around the world that have been waiting, some of them for as much as 10 years, to become part of our board of directors, to help us with all the research. We're asking people like Olaf out there in Germany and all the other scientists from around the world that would like to contribute to putting together the GEET book on all the different science principles. We are going to be appointing someone in the next few days to start putting up a new website. And it'll be changed weekly or added to weekly with another 1-hour video so that you can go in on video and learn each part of the theory, showing the scientific testing and how we tested it and why these results are there. This is for educational purposes, and I anticipate, since there's no book in the world on it, we're going to have a lot of subscriptions from different schools around the world where they'll pay that $10 to see this hour's lesson. But we're going to break it down and show people what is available. Some of the basic knowledge will be up on the website for free, but if you want to go through the training, you'll be able to do that right from your home. Because there's no way, with the way the numbers are growing right now, that we're ever going to be able to train that many people in one building, no matter how big the school is. But if you're looking at every single piece of equipment on the planet, that's a lot of equipment. There's a lot of people out there. There's not going to be that great a markup on the little engines. But there's people who have devoted the last 20, 30 years of their life working on little engines. So they're going to want to come in and take the Monday class to learn the technology and then the Tuesday class to put it on small engines. You don't have to take the whole week. If you want to come in and just learn semis, you can come in on Monday and come back on Friday. We're going to be rotating some of the schedules as soon as possible so that no matter what day you show up, you can take the class. If you're just going to move along, instead of Monday through Friday, if your schedule is such that you have to come in on Thursday and stay till Wednesday, we're going to accommodate it. But the growth factor that I was looking at when I came to this show, I had no clue that it would be 20 times what I thought in 1 week. But as the word is getting out there and more TV coverage from all over, there's people willing to cancel vacations, take time off from their regular job, taking vacations real early. This was the momentum we were looking for years ago. We just didn't have the right management team. I've gone through about 25 people that have worked for the company in the last 5 years that I put a lot of trust in, not to see product go out the door. So I've had to take the reins completely. I am in total control of the company, and right now product is going to go out the door. Starting within the next 7 to 10 days, there will be generators rolling out the door. We have another gentleman here right now who's going to be putting lawnmowers and generators out the door right here in Arizona. We have a few other people that would like to do the same thing in Canada. We're looking to set up as many shops as we can. And big corporations don't like the technology. Good. That means we're all going to have to stick with mom and pop operations. Little ones here, little ones there, building the parts. I need shops that'll just build the butterflies for me. Another shop that can just build the little valves, the handles for me. Another one that's set up with high-speed equipment so they can make the block. And then we're going to hire some people that are disabled, that are able to put these things together and put them in a box. It doesn't all have to be done in Salt Lake City. We're looking for people from around the world that want to work with us. It doesn't make sense for me to make all those exhaust pipes in one shop, but for now it does. Keep up with the volume, it's fine. But the minute we get to the point the volume is too high for this shop, we're going to open another shop somewhere else, so we don't have all that shipping. But we are trying to expand the technology as fast as we can. Normally I ask questions. Are there any questions? Yes?
I thought you were going to work with the Tecumseh at one time rather than, did it work out?
Last August, I was not aware that we had perfected in my shop the fuel injection systems. The management at that time decided that they didn't like the direction I was trying to get the company going, and they didn't like the idea of giving 25% of the profits back to mankind. There were a few other things they didn't like, and it was an attempted takeover. It took them 4 months to orchestrate. At the end of the 4 months, they had finally succeeded in convincing my wife to get out and leave me. Christmas Eve, there were calls from, not Christmas Eve, I'm sorry, New Year's Eve. There were some calls that came in from people who'd bought generators and didn't get them. And 2 of those calls my wife took. One was about 6 in the evening, the other was about 9:30. And those 2 people that had bought generators needed the generators maybe at midnight for life support systems. And they both informed my wife and I that if that generator caused the death of someone in their family, they were going to come kill us. So we had a little pressure on us that night. Someone from the office called up and told my wife early in the day that the company was about 4 days away from going bankrupt. And if she was smart, she'd get all her stuff off the property before it goes to bankruptcy. Otherwise, she could lose everything. So for January 1st, my wife moved out. 5 weeks later, she saw the company growing. She saw I had $250,000 in inventory. She saw all the other parts were coming off the assembly line. And she realized they all lied. Of course, I fired everybody in the meantime because I found out they'd sabotaged about $4 or $5 million worth of deals that were supposed to close by the end of the year. They wanted to own the company and they wanted me out of their picture. When that backfired, the same thing just occurred 6 weeks ago. And from within my own company, some people stepped in and caused a major fight with my wife and I. 3rd week we were having the school at the ranch. And for 4 weeks, or 3 weeks I should say, I was in and out of jail 6 times, not even knowing why. I didn't know in Colorado that if I don't like you, I can pick up the phone and say, hey, he had a fight with his wife. He's threatened her. And the cops don't even come question me. I don't have to sign anything. They just go out and arrest him. Then, the minute he gets out of jail again, I just pick up the phone and say, he called and harassed me again. And you go back to jail. So it has been a very trying 6 weeks. In the middle of all of this, one of the people involved had gotten to my wife, and they showed up at her house, our house, and the way they approached the driveway, she knew something was wrong. She thought they were very close friends, so as that car came to a stop, she jumped out and said, Molly, you've got to get off the property. Paul just called. He's out of jail, and he's looking for a gun. He's going to kill you. I have a 2-year restraining order not to talk to my wife because of all these beautiful things people have done to take over this company. I know sometime in the next few days she's going to start seeing the changes on the internet. She's going to find out that I'm going down to J-Leno. She's going to find out all the rest of it. And when she finally comes to her senses, she's going to realize that these people who claimed they were her best friends are no more than common crooks. Greed has destroyed hundreds and hundreds of friendships that we thought we had. People come in and they want to own the company. I want to own it. I want to own it. Many of the people who came would come and they had such high ratings from other friends that have known them for 25 and 30 years. They're good church people until they smell that dollar. So at this point, the control of this company is mine. It's going to stay there. When my wife and I were running the company 4 years ago, before we went on tour to show it, to prove to the scientists that wouldn't come to us, we wanted to prove to them it works. Here it is. Now say it doesn't work. And they couldn't. And before we left, we were putting 50 to 100 engines a month out the door with just 2 people working for us in the shop. That's it. We turned it over from management group to this one, to this one, to this one, to this one, trying to find a team. None of them produced product. A couple engines here, a couple there. But what Molly and I did, running a newspaper, running the house, handling 300 calls a day, we had anywhere from 300 to 600 house guests a year that would come in, and we worked together like this. So I know I can do the job. Hopefully my wife will be back by my side to help because she's a great incentive for me to make things happen a lot faster. But right now we are pulling together teams of people, the ones that want to be part of this growth. I just need to know, what do you want to do? And like I said, some people are into motorcycles. Jeff Starkey got a hold of me. After 3 years, I don't know how many of you have heard of Jeff Starkey? The quantum motorcycle. Well, it's up there with the Harley. Higher quality, I think. But after 3 years of thinking about it, he finally called up one day and he said, Paul, I can't believe your technology is as simple as it looks on the internet. Can I build one? I said, absolutely. So he threw one on his motorcycle. He called me a few days ago and was telling me he's only getting double the mileage, 98% reduction in pollution, and the engine at all speeds, laboratory tested, the engine at all speeds runs 30% cooler. The block, the exhaust, everything. He says, Paul, that represents 10 times the life of an engine if you can keep it that cool. Now do that with every kind of piece of equipment there is, and you start magnifying just how big this project is. We got one of the research institutes in the United States got a hold of me by email. They said they were testing my device hooked to a Coleman furnace for home. According to their old documents, which they've always used that book and the formula, they knew how many BTUs of energy there is in a cubic foot of gas, propane and natural gas. They hooked my device up, and they can't figure out why they're getting 300% more BTU output than there is in a cubic foot of gas. And they've asked me pretty blunt, can you tell us what the new formula is so we can calculate this? I said, it hasn't been written yet. That's up to you. Now, what would it cost to go hire those laboratories? What would it cost me to go hire universities? I priced it out years ago. And almost all of them, the price tag was in the millions. Now, I get all of that research for free because they're all motivated. And Baylor University and others that came to me, we want to do your testing. We want to help you. We want to help you. Can you write us a check for $250,000 now to get started with? No. I'll wait until you really want to play with it and you come to me and offer me some money. The universities have gotten a hold of us from Europe. They're all applying for grant money. But since I'm the inventor, they would also like to put 10% of that grant money back in my pocket for ongoing R&D so that I can help them learn the technology. So this year coming up is going to be fun. Years ago I was told, 1975, a woman called me up, said she had to see me right away and she wanted to buy the round picnic table I was building in the front yard. And I said, no problem, what's your address? So she gives me the address. And I hang the phone up and I go out in the front yard and I'm looking around and there is not a house around for miles. Nobody in the world knew I was building a picnic table when the phone rang, except me. So I'm standing out there scratching my head going, wait a minute. Well, I really don't care how she knew I was building one. She wants a table, I need the money. So I loaded it up, went over to her house. There was a huge subdivision going in, and it was the only house that was completed. All the rest of them were just breaking ground. Hers, the lawn, everything was perfect. Picture perfect. I get into the driveway, unload the picnic table, took it in the backyard. She greeted me at the back door and said, come in. Your check's down there at the end of the table. And sit down. Looked at this real sweet looking old lady and walked to the end of the table and I pick up the check. She says, it's got $10 extra on there for your time. Sit down. And I looked real close at the check because everybody back then just knew me as Paul Pantone. But on the check it says Paul William Frederickson Pantone III. I didn't tell anybody my full name for years. So I'm looking over at her and she's pointing to sit down. I did. For the next hour and a half in her home, she proceeded to tell me what a rotten little guy I was as a kid. Some of the dirty things I did to my sister, and gum in her hair, little things like that. She mentioned how I accidentally burned a building down once when I meant to just burn the trash can. I was a little tiny tyke. But she told me all these horrible things I did as a kid, and she really had my undivided attention at that point. I said, what's this all about? She says, I have a message for you from God. And you're going to listen. For everything you've already done in your life, you get to live through hell right now. From this day forward for 7 years, it will be hell for you. Everything you think you can do, you're going to try to do it. You're going to become an overnight success in a business, and it'll be taken away from you in one day. You're going to buy a house, and it's going to burn to the ground. You're going to buy another house that'll be bulldozed. You're going to have another house that'll be totally destroyed by water. But the 7 years will be over when you've lost your wife and your son. She then told me the next 7 years, and then the next 7 years. She also told me I would be given many gifts, but I had to use them wisely. If you have the gift to touch someone and heal them, you can only do it under certain conditions. But if you ever use that to hurt someone, you're going to get it back tenfold. She told me that I would have scientists kneeling before me seeking knowledge. And with that one, I laughed. Lady, I'm a 9th grade dropout. Scientists are not going to be kneeling before me for knowledge. She says, they will in Congress. Well, I'm not too much into government. I don't like government. What do you mean? I'm going to be called in front of Congress? She said, no, you'll be invited. And at the same time, she told me that the woman standing beside me would know everything I need to know. So she pinned everything down right to dates. My first wife asked for a divorce. I had just come home from a fishing trip with my son. I looked down at my watch, and it was exactly 12:05. Same time the woman said, 7 years from today, you will lose your wife and son. I didn't try to argue. I did not try to make up with her or anything else. I said, if that's your wish, I understand. And walked off. I was told 7 angels would come before me and hand me things. One of those things was right there. After 3.5 years, this appeared right on the ground next to where I was working. No idea what it was just a piece of metal. But I was thinking I needed to have a smaller pipe going through the reactor rod. So I pick it up, stick it in there, and lo and behold, zero pollution. Okay. She told me that as I went through that 21 years, I would have scientists and inventors from around the world that would come to me and bring me technology that should have been here 100 years ago, some much older. And I have had everything she said happen, one after another after another. She told me I couldn't have more than a tithing of the company. The rest of it belonged to mankind. I was no more than the caretaker of the technology. And as long as I handled it in that fashion, people would come to me and support what I was doing. They would become part of this company, to become an army, so that within the next 5 to 10 years of that army being formed and people out in the field installing it, we could then give them fuel-free products. The technology is here. It's been handed to me. I got to say, some of it hard, some of it on a silver platter. But there is technology that makes the GEET look sick. But it's not time for it. First, you have to have your base. Before somebody can walk in and hand you the good ones, you need to have a distribution network worldwide. And don't plan on trying to ship from here to another country or back and forth, because they're not going to let some of these things be shipped. You have to have a network of people that can build whatever you need built. And they don't need to know each other. Matter of fact, if you went into my office right now and said, how many sets of plans have you sold? I don't know. Do you have record of it? Nope. Do you know who's got them? Nope. And I've kept the internet that way. Up until 2 weeks ago, you did not find names, addresses, and phone numbers of all the distributors. You didn't find a lot of other information on there. I didn't want him to know that you got one in your car. I didn't want him to know he's got one on his car. I only wanted just a small amount of that information out at any time to protect some of the people that were afraid. They were afraid the government was going to come in. We've got one poor trucker right now. He said he is really afraid. He's ready to take it off his truck. He put one on his truck and was driving around out by Missouri. And without thinking one day, since he usually filled up at his hometown there, he pulls into this big truck stop because he was almost out of water. And he figured, well, while I'm here, I'll put in a little gas too and top it off. Well, he pulls up to the big pumps there, and he stops. Wait a minute, I can't use diesel. Gas is better. So he backs out of the truck area and pulls into the car area. At this point, he's out there filling it up. It only took about 20 gallons of gas. He backs the truck up, pulls up over where the air and water is. And as he's filling up the other side with 100 gallons of water, he looks over at the gas station. All he can see is about 100 noses stuck to the window. All these truckers laughing and pointing. And all of a sudden he's thinking, oh, Jesus. Paul warned me that if I was driving down the road on water, they may nail me and confiscate my truck for not paying fuel tax. I could be in trouble now. So he went in and acted dumber than a rock. Yeah, got some petrol out there on pump one. And I said, yeah, okay. Hey, you want a receipt? He said, yeah. I think the boss is going to want one. They're going, oh, yeah. So he gets his receipt, and as he's walking out, heading for the truck, you see all these other truckers running to theirs. They're following him out of the gas station. He goes up and over the bridge and hangs heading east. Some of the trucks get on going the other way, the other one's right on top of him. About 30 miles later, they're still following him. And he's going 10 miles under the speed limit. Nobody wants to pass him. They're all behind him on the CB sets. Yeah, I'm following him. Boy, this guy is dumber than a rock. That thing should blow any minute. Oh, look at that. He's shifting gears. There's no smoke coming out. What the hell did he make of that? Well, he kept talking about this. Finally, he takes a turn heading south, and all the other trucks kept going. Once he realized that none of that crew that saw him putting water in was following him, he gets on there and says, hey, who's dumber than a rock? Did it blow up? He says, no, it didn't. You're running on gas and water? He says, yep. And the thing isn't having any problems? He says, well, it's only getting 32 miles a gallon. Now who's dumber than a rock? He went off the air and didn't pick his mic up again because he had truckers from all over the place going, where do you get it? What is this? How does it work? And he started hitting the panic button going, oh, geez, maybe I shouldn't have said anything. But he has been afraid to run that truck near that section again. He's running a different route right now. And he said he's had a few people come up to him and say, is this the truck that runs on water and gas? No, runs on diesel. He fills up at home now. They go down and they buy 55-gallon drums, come home and fill up the tank because he does not want to get caught at another gas station. We got a few guys that got in very early on the plans down in Texas, and they said the minute they had it on their cars, they put locks on the hoods because they don't want anyone to know that what they're driving. Kentucky was the first state in the country that said you can use water here. We don't care. As long as you paid 16.8 cents a gallon on the water, we don't care what you use for fuel. So Brian Adair in Kentucky has his Suburban set up to run on 80% water. And it's totally legal in that one state. Now some of the other people that are in the same sense of humor have decided they're going to go into their revenue department and hand them a check. Just say, how much is the tax for fuel? Well, it's this much. Well, fine, here. I want to get a receipt. Here's my check. I'm going to put 100 gallons of fuel in my car. Make it myself. And then when they find out it's water, they're having a heck of a time trying to figure out how do we put this in our books. How do we put this in our books? We don't have a water tax. But if you offer it and they refuse it, make it legal tender is even better, let them refuse it. Then you have the right to do it. So we are going to do a lot of challenges. California was the toughest one to crack, and for about 4 years I sold plans out there. And some of the people that bought the plans in California called me back going, Paul, I talked with CARB, I talked with the air quality people. They said you can't legally put this on the car. Finally, some of the calls coming back going, oh, this must be that crazy Pantone's invention. The damn thing's just a con. That was the director of CARB. I got that documented from 4 people that heard that come out of her mouth, and I called her up. I said, guess what? Do you remember me, Mrs. Costa? Yes. What do you want? I said, I just want to tell you that I could sue you right now for slander. I can come after the state of California for some of the things you've said. But I also want to let you know I'm coming to California. And my car is set up to run on 80% water. And if you don't like it, be there. Bring a cop. Bring some handcuffs. She said, I don't think that'll be necessary. I said, then I hope I never hear you tell people they can't put it on their car again. Because your program is voluntary, and I don't volunteer. She said, well, I guess I can't make you, can I? I said, no, you can't. And you can't threaten people that want to get triple their mileage. You can't threaten them if they're reducing pollution. And we have Fox, ABC, NBC, all of them have said the first person in this country that goes to jail because they're cleaning up pollution and getting triple the mileage is going to be the story of the year. So I'm hoping it's me. As far as the technology, it is extremely simple. It has to be a pipe within a pipe. Understanding why it works has taken me 20 years. Been very frustrating 20 years. Up until 1996, when I was told that Molly would be standing beside me and that he would bring me a woman that would be able to explain everything I didn't know. And when I first met Molly, I had no clue that this was the gal. I just saw a pretty little girl that has 3 kids, great mother. She likes to cook. She likes to sew. Just a nice person. One day after being together for a few months, a doctor called me up to ask some questions. And she happened to pick up the phone. And when I saw her sitting in the other room chatting, I knew it wasn't for me. And I started hearing things coming out of her mouth that were confusing. Wait a minute. Maxwell's law, Faraday's law. What do you mean there's 2 precursors to the laws of physics? What is she talking about? Then she starts talking about thermal inertia and some other things. I'm scratching my head going, where did she get this? Did somebody write an article about my technology and she read it? What? So she finally finished about an hour, hour and a half later and hung up and said, oh, have a good night, Dr. Richter. Has Dr. Richter called for me? She says, no. He wanted to ask me what the theories were behind it. I said, what else do you know about my technology? She sat down and gave me about a 2.5-hour lecture. I said, that's what the scientists from around the world have been asking me for all these years, and I can't answer one of those questions logically that makes them happy, and you're sitting here telling me you understand all of it. How? She said, I don't know, I just see it. I said, okay. I was told this would happen. So whatever I don't need, whatever I don't know, I just ask her. When I had a question in business, honey, how do you think we should get this out to mankind? It's not working the way I've been doing it. She says, give the plans away. We'll start with churches. We did. A little later, she says, we need to give the plans away to the entire world before the year 2000. Put it on the internet. I'm sitting there thinking, well, it's about $250,000 a year we're not going to be pulling in. She says, yeah, but how much would it be worth if every university in the world was willing to teach that within the next year? I said, okay, you're right again, honey. We put it up on the internet. And within 72 hours, we started getting calls from all over Europe. We started getting emails. We've got a few of them at the house there in the safe. They're precious. The same guys that were going on the internet saying, we were frauds. All of a sudden, they have their first lawnmower running. And they send me a picture of it, saying it runs better when you add water than it does with just gas. I love some of those humbling apologies that weren't quite apologies. It felt good, though, to know that that many people out there that didn't believe in something can now make it run. The back cover of the Exotic Research magazine that Steve sent out here a while back, showing 3 high school boys that had absolutely no idea what they were building. The teacher hands them a set of plans and said, here, you need a piece of mild steel, 1/2 inch in diameter, 1/2 inch pipe. You slide this into here, and you put the exhaust pipe around it. Then you hook it up to a jar. And they did. Took them a little over 3 hours. Over the weekend, they had no idea what it was they built. It was a project for the teacher. And the teacher said, you can't start it, you can't do anything with it. But Monday, you show up in your suits. So Monday, he drags them down to the fair where I was at, or the fairgrounds. Boys bring their engine and set it up. We ran the engine for them first on gas. Then we had them start it up again on coffee with sugar in it. Then we had them start it up on 95% soda pop. ABC went nuts on that. They had a ball filming that day. One of the other guys that showed up at that show, he brought his own, He lives in Salt Lake. He drove all the way to California just so he could show off his toys. And this old boy, I think he's about 70, 75. But he's got his engine there, and he's got all these different jars of different fuels. Pickle juice, Mountain Dew. What do you want to see it run on? Well, he's doing the demonstration, and he looks up, and all of a sudden he realizes he's got ABC News camera right in his face. I've never been on TV before. They just keep talking. Keep the engine going. So he ran the engine for him on all the different fuels he could. The boys ran their engine on everything they could. They got a hold of me about a week later, and these three boys said they have never been so popular. Once they hit the front page of the newspaper and they were on the news that night, everybody in the school knows who they are. You know, they don't have a problem getting dates anymore. He said, being a scientist and the inventor has a lot more popularity than being a jock. Because all of these girls are, look what he can do. What can he do with a car? How much money is he going to make putting these things on? Well, there's a lot of money to be made in it. Looking at the trucking industry alone, I use definitely different marketing strategies than any other company. I picked up the phone after we had our first few diesels up and going. I called all the trucking companies around. I said, how much do you guys spend a year on fuel? And what would it be worth if I could just double your mileage? I let them tell me how much I should charge for the product. The average price that we got was $12,500 is what they'd all be willing to pay to get double the mileage. So I said, okay, $8,000. That's what we're going to charge. I announced that we were going to be doing it in the $8,000 range, and we had J.B. Hunt, Yellow Freight, Consolidated Freightways, Dick Simon Trucking, England Trucking. I'm sitting here just writing totals down, how many trucks. Within 2 weeks of announcing we're going to be coming out with a diesel model soon, we had over 240,000 trucks right now ready to install on. Now, it only cost about $1,000 to build the unit. So there's a reasonable amount of profit. So at $8,000 each, I want to go after all those big fleets, cash up front. But I want to help the little guy more. So if you're a little guy and only have one truck, you come to our station and say you need one on your truck, we're going to ask you for 25% down payment, let you pay us out of your savings over a 12-month period, no interest. That's for anybody who has a fleet up to 10. If you got 11 to 24, half down in 12 months to pay it off. The big guys that can afford it, full price. I want to know that I can afford to finance those little guys and help them out. I want to see them have a little bit more edge over the big companies. So we're trying to do things in a moral business instead of the way corporate America has run. Any questions at this point? Yes?
How does this work on a fuel injection?
Good question. Fuel injected. There are people throughout the world building them on different types of diesels right now. The most popular method they're using on the fuel injection is to put a solenoid in to your ignition switch to the starter so that when the starter is engaged, the injectors work. When the key is turned to the on position so you can run, it shuts the injectors off and you just feed the new fuel directly into the air intake. Simple. Others are presently working, like Jeff Starkey and a few others, on doing it with computer controls. It wasn't until 6 weeks ago, the day before my wife and I broke up, that I came across the papers on the fuel injector that had been perfected a year ago. And I looked at the papers. They'd changed the name of the company. Instead of GEET, it was going to be called HEAT, H-E-E-T. And I'm looking at these 4-page flyers they had all printed up. And I'm looking at all the names. Mine, of course, isn't in there anymore. And I'm looking at this going, how come I never heard about this? 5 people were involved in perfecting it. And it's sitting right now in Salt Lake. So I called one of the numbers on the list. The others have been disconnected. One guy answers the phone. I said, yeah, what can you tell me about HEAT? He says, oh, well, we were going to take over GEET around Christmas time, and everything fell apart. I said, well, what can you tell me about this paper I have in my hand? He said, well, I built a computer, made a program for it, burned a couple of chips, and we got the cars getting 25 and 30% increased horsepower and triple the mileage. And how long does it take to put one of these on a car? He said, well, if you want it on a Jetta, like we did the first one, he says, I've got chips right now in stock. It takes about an hour and a half. It takes an hour and a half. Yeah. You just have to plug into your computer and reset my program to your computer so that your car computer thinks it's doing everything the way it's supposed to, and then the new computer chip takes over. Because how long does it take to put this on any other car? He said, about a day. I said, why were you willing to work with the old management if you knew they were trying to throw me out of the company? He said, well, they made me an offer. And since you and I never talked, and they said you were just a real hard person to work with, you were trying to give away the company, they thought you should be out of the picture. So I've had a lot of shocks in the last year or two. Fuel injection is not that hard. The first time we found out that we wasted all the money on that big diesel that we converted, I converted a huge diesel generator, 240 kW, 7¼ 7½ inch pistons, and we put the electrical system on it, magneto, we put in coils for each spark plug, put the spark plugs in it. It ran like a top. Fox News called one day and said they were coming down. They wanted it as part of their library, and I said, great, come on down. So I go out there and I'm looking at the engine, and it was all detailed, everything was pretty except the spark plug wires. They looked like heck. So I yanked all the spark plug wires off. Went in the shop, and I handed them to my brother-in-law and said, here, make a new set and put them on there. I want really nice looking spark plug wires on there. Everything else looks nice and clean. So I went back in the house and was busy on the phone. Fox News shows up, and I go out to the backyard, poured in all the junk we were going to run it on, crude oil and paint thinner, and just junk. Started it up, hit that starter button, it fired right up, and we're running the thing for about 15 minutes. No pollution coming out of it, it's running beautiful. And the cameraman finally sets the camera down a little bit. He said, I got a question for you. I said, what's that? He said, I was a mechanic for years before I became a cameraman, but why aren't there wires between the spark plugs and the coils? And I looked back at my machine. He hadn't put the wires back on yet. I said, I guess we didn't need an electrical system. That was the first time I realized that for some reason the GEET fuel works in a diesel engine without a spark. That's when I started calling up some of the other scientists that I've known for years saying, I can't explain this one, can you help me? And they're all sitting there going, no clue. Absolutely no clue. It can't work that way. The wires are off the machine, it's running perfect. Well, about a week later, we were shipping out, at that time, our first batches of engines. And my brother-in-law was going to save me a few bucks on every engine, and instead of putting a shut-off valve on the fuel, he said, you don't need that there. We'll just hook a hose straight across. It won't shut off. I said, well, you have to kill the fuel or kill the vacuum. He said, okay. I said, go get a pair of vice grips and pinch the hose closed. So I go out to the garage and find out, well, I'm saving you $5.50 on every engine for the hose clamps and the valve. And I said, but it won't shut off. He thought about that for a few minutes and said, oh, you're right. I'll put them on now. But we've had some really interesting things in the shop. My brother-in-law was going to help me on my Suburban one day. I asked him, I said, before I take that thing on a long trip, check everything. I said, but to set the timing, I want you to turn the engine over to top dead center and physically set it, not with the engine running. And that particular day, he had come in one of his old uniforms, because he used to work for Chevy. And it's got Mr. Goodwrench emblems and all these other things going down his arm. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. okay. So he gets out there, hits the key, starts it up. A couple minutes later, he comes into the kitchen, and he's just shaking his head. Total void of thinking. I mean, his head's just out there. And I looked over at my wife and started laughing, and I said, "What happened, Matt?" So, I loosened up the distributor and started the car, and I tried to adjust it by ear like I usually do, and I can turn the distributor all the way back and forth, and it doesn't change the timing. It runs the same. Then, because I couldn't figure that out, I went and got my pliers and I pulled some of the spark plug wires off. And it's still running. Okay, then I went in and turned the key off. And it's still running. It was one of the best laughs I had in a long time with him, because if you'd have told a mechanic something like that was possible, they wouldn't listen. They'd walk out of the room. But here it was, this look, help! So I go outside, I just reached down, turned the fuel off. Engine died. I said, now, set it by hand. He said, okay. But we've had a lot of people that have called up with just a different anomaly. We have an engineer that works for General Motors. He bought the plans and he's put it on his own car. And that was when I was meeting with OPEC in my living room. My wife came in with the portable phone. She said, honey, you've got to take this one. And I told her only if it's important. But she said, you've got to take this one. I said, okay. So I said, hello. And he identifies himself. The minute I hear his name, I said, okay, this is the engineer. What's he done? He's, I got a problem. I've got one of those heat sensors so I can detect the temperature of the engine and all. And I started revving the engine up to see how high I could get it. And he said, at 9,000 RPM, my tach doesn't go any higher. But after about maybe a minute or two of running the engine, the top of my engine, the entire air intake manifold, it's got ice on it, about a 1/4 inch thick. Where's the ice coming from? We have had our engines hooked up to different dyno stands for different testing throughout the country. One of my favorite times that I ran the engine was on a mixture containing a little battery acid. And when you run a 10 horsepower Briggs & Stratton using just a little battery acid in the fuel, you better plan on seeing that 3,600 RPM engine spin at about 12,000. And the minute you get that thing over 10,000, look around at mechanics. They're all on the floor or diving. It's fun. We've also been able to idle 350 Chevys on dyno stands down to 75 and 80 RPM, which is unheard of. There should be vibration, knocking, pinging all over the place. There isn't. We have one engine that was done in California, which ABC caught part of that one, and it's on our video. There are videos available. They're $20. We do have T-shirts. We have other things available, as well as products. But we were running this one that was custom made the day before. The guy came in, bought the plans the day before the show, and he said, run the thing for 2.5 hours. Shut it off. And lo and behold, we still have 1 full quart. Only it's not gas now. It's a white substance that when you take it out and feel it, it feels like paraffin. When you take it down to a laboratory and have them analyze it, they say it's paraffin, but not in a solid state. It's in a liquid state. And they're scratching their head going, it's paraffin, but it's strange. Well, paraffin has a lot more energy per ounce than gas does. So it's kind of neat when you start out with 1 quart of gas and you end up with 1 quart of paraffin, which has got about 25 times more energy in it than the gas did to begin with. Yesterday he was running the closed loop lawnmower out front. I don't know how many of you got to see that, but when he finally got it to the point where he shut off all air and all exhaust from leaving the engine, 100% closed loop, he ran it for about 20 minutes. And I sat there for 20 minutes watching that lawnmower running, sitting there on the bench, and I went back over, and it looked like the exact same amount of fuel as when he started. We've had some cases with closed loop where after running one engine, a generator, under load, 104 hours on 1 gallon of gas. So closed loop is very efficient. We're learning more every day, but it's because of the thousands of people out there that have the plans, that are creative, that are thinkers, which is something that we have working for us where GM doesn't. With GM, you walk in the morning, you might be in R&D, and they say, this is what you're to do today. Don't think, just do it. They don't allow those people the creativeness. They limit them on everything they do. And we don't have a limit on anything. I could hand 20 sets of plans out right now to 20 different people, and they're not going to follow the instructions. They're going to do something a little bit different, the way they think they should do it. But it's those little changes that are helping us advance this company. It's like having the biggest R&D team in the world. I was told I had to invent this. I had to bring it to the people. And I would have an army. None of it back in 1975 made any sense. When my first wife did say she wanted that divorce that day, I went and checked into a hotel. And instead of bawling my eyes out, I just sat there going, you know, what else? But this woman hit everything for the last 7 years. I lost lumber yards. I lost 3 houses. I lost this. I lost, no matter what it was, I lost everything she said I would. I prayed about it. The next morning I got up and I said, I'm going down to see her. So I drive back to the same house, and I'm a nut for receipts. I've got every receipt since about 1969, 1970. I know right where they all are. But I always save my receipts. And I had written her name, address, and phone number in my checkbook. So I got my old checkbook out, found the address, drove to the house, go up, knock at the door. May I see Mrs. Cunningham, please? I opened the door, and I'm sorry, you're at the wrong house. I opened it up and I said, this is the address, this is the street, right? You know, I was here, it shows right here, on August 14th of this year. And he looked at that and he said, no, you weren't. The house wasn't built till November. I said, you got to be pulling my leg. I was here. He said, the house was not built until November. If you were here, describe my house. It's okay, you've got yellow and orange daisy flowers in the bathroom. You've got a great big dining room table in there with a scratch on the leg. You've got a blue marble mantle in the living room. You've got a rounded patio area in the backyard. He said, come on in, this is getting entertaining. So I came into the house. He said, let's go in the kitchen now. Would you like a cup of coffee or a cold one? I said, yeah, I'll have a cold one. So I sit down, and I'm looking over the dining room table. I said, that's the table I sat at. He said, well, there's no scratch on the leg. We just got that. I said, there isn't? So I walk around, I look down, and there is about a 4-inch gouge in that leg. I said, that's the scratch. I sat right here. Well, coming through the living room to get to the kitchen, there was a blue mantle. Then his wife is in the other room. He says, honey, grab me the metal box that we have the house papers in. So she comes out of the bedroom, down the hallway, and I see her walking in wearing a little apron with little pieces of wallpaper that was left over. She just finished wallpapering the bathroom. And that was the paper. Oh, I'm looking over at her going, that's the paper I just told you about. He says, yeah, I know what you told me. That's why I invited you in. Because we just bought that yesterday morning. He says, we bought the house, we bought the lot, we had the house built. It wasn't here when you say you were here. But I see your deposit receipt is stamped in your book. And I see the address you have written there. And you start describing my house on things that nobody knows about. Then he goes over and he opens the curtains to look in the backyard. The only thing different was it was a different type of picnic table, but sitting in the same spot on a round patio. I said, okay. She wasn't here. I wasn't here. Right. What else is going to happen? So I left. at that point, really confused. When she said 7 angels would come to me and they'd identify themselves, they started happening. There was one guy that just appeared at a gas station when I was up in Seattle, and he handed me a piece of candle, about 1.5 inches long. He said, God wants you to make engines run on this. And he turned around and walked off. Never seen the guy before? Okay. I put the candle in my pocket. About 4 months later, I was up in Reno having some fun at the blackjack table. Guy sits next to me, and I remember I was just reaching out for my cards, and I see this piece of candle in front of me, and I looked down at that, and I looked over at him. I said, hi, did you want to play? He says, no, you shouldn't be here playing. You should be at home building that carburetor. God wants it built. Now, I'm a carpenter. I am a carpenter. I love building. I hate mechanic work. I can't stand the smell of grease. You'll build it. He got up and walked out. And okay, he found me in Seattle, Portland area. He finds me up here in Reno. Well, a few weeks later, I took my kids down to the Fisherman's Wharf. They wanted to go down and have some fun for the day. I said, fine. So get them down there, and I handed each one of them a couple rolls of quarters, and I said, go have fun on the pinballs. Play whatever you want. Well, I'm sitting out there on the bench having a cigarette. This guy comes over and sits down next to me, and I looked over, and it's him again. It's like, I know, he wants me to build a carburetor. He says, yeah, but it's got to be a special one. It has to be able to run on this. And he hands me another piece of candle. It looks just like the other 2 pieces he's already handed me. The first one, I used waxing windows, so I know it isn't here anymore. The second one, I lit in my ashtray and watched it burn to the last drop. And he hands me the same piece, burned at both ends. Okay. I'll start thinking about this a lot more seriously. About 4 months went by. I moved into a new house, fixer-upper. And I walk in, I'm loading stuff into the house, fixing it up a little here, a little there. And there's a knock at my door one day. And he's standing there again. He said, I brought you an engine to start with. I said, what am I supposed to do with it? He said, make it run on this. I said, how the hell did you find me? I just moved in. My name's not even on the mailbox yet. I haven't received my first piece of mail. How did you know I was here? He smiled. He says, just like I knew you were every other place you were. You're going to build a carburetor. So after 5 attempts or 6 with him of trying to convince me to build a carburetor, I got the picture. I hate mechanic work, so I hired 3 kids in the neighborhood that were unemployed. I said, you like doing mechanic work? Great, come on over. I want you to build me this and this. See if it works. You, I want you to build one of these. You, build me a coil. My yard looked like a junkyard for somebody building stills. I mean, I had every kind of shape of metal you can imagine out there. Until that last day. And my girlfriend at the time was saying, why are you wasting hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to get better mileage? You've got models right now that'll give them 50% and double the mileage. Why waste any more money? Because nobody on this planet gives a damn. Why don't we spend that money on new cars and beautiful new things for the house? It's because I'm supposed to be getting this ready for mankind. And I'm going to do it. It put a little wedge between her and I for a while. But that Friday I decided that if I did not get triple the mileage, I would set it aside for a while. And that Friday when I went out, walked up to the machine and saw that rod laying there. Well, I guess that would restrict the pipe a little bit more. Instead of pulling it all apart, putting a smaller pipe in, that might function. So I slid it in. That was the day we discovered we were not only getting triple the mileage, but we could put anything we wanted in there as fuel. The junkier the fuel, the more energy there was. And it was fun. I loaded that thing up in the back of my car and I took off for town. I tried tranny fluid at this shop. I tried some gear oil from this shop. I went to this shop. I went all over Auburn, California, hitting all these different shops. What's the worst junk you can put into an engine? And finally, one of the guys looked at me and said, well, have you tried the oil from the asphalt plant? I said, no, I haven't. Yeah, there's an asphalt plant. So I run down to Ophir Oil Company. And I walk in, and the old boy owns the place, Mr. Naylor. He was in there, and I need some gunk. What's the worst gunk, the cheapest, slimy stuff you've got? He says, well, we got this SS40 we put on the ground before we blacktop. It's the sledge off the bottom. I said, can I have a couple of cups? He said, for what? I said, I'm going to put it in that engine out there. He said, it'll destroy the crank immediately. I said, no, as fuel. He starts laughing. He says, you're going to try to use that as fuel? You'd have a better job if you took a tinkle in the tank, kid. I said, no, really, can I get some? He said, yeah, if you want some. So he sent one of his guys up to get me a couple of cups. Came down, we poured it in there, I started the engine up. And he's looking out his window, and he's got two phones going, bang, bang, bang. And all of a sudden, when he sees that engine is running, and he sees his mechanic like this, he hangs both phones up, and he comes outside, and he walks up to the machine, puts his hand down, sniffs the exhaust a few times. He said, I got to shake your hand, and can I get your autograph? I said, what? You're going to be the next Howard Hughes. There's no engine in the world that could run on that crud. I said, well, it's easy. You'll never make it to the market. They'll kill you. You'll never make it to the market. I don't know how many times I've heard that one. I've had them come up to my booth when I first started showing off. You better hide this thing. They're going to kill you. They're going to kill you. Well, had I not been told in 1975 that this was for God and not to have fear, I'd probably be scared to death. I'd like to have all of these unusual models that we've built that nobody can explain yet. Because we've already got 38 phenomenon that we can identify. Some we can't. Yes? I'm going to find out when I get home. On my way up there, I'll be stopping by to see him. He says he is afraid right now that oil companies or someone might hear about this. And he does not want his name anywhere. He's asked me to destroy all notes with his name on it from my records. I'll show it to you when you get here. I don't want to show anybody else. I don't want anybody else to know it's in my possession. Because right now my garage door stays locked. And nobody goes in there now but me. But I've seen this before with some people that are, they get a little afraid. Yes?
How long ago was it?
That call was about 8 weeks ago.
Because there's somebody on the internet says they're running your courses. And they have a webpage. I can't tell you exactly what it is, because I don't have the information with me. But I think it's somewhere over in Germany or Russia.
The Germans just put a video up. They've been running my engine. I think it was Dr. Olaf. He flew in to meet me about 4 years ago. They took it back, and they ran their Volkswagen over there on it for a while. Once they achieved triple the mileage, 95% reduction in pollution, they emailed me that they felt I was being very distasteful. I'm going to put it mildly, since I wouldn't give them the formula on how to run on pure water. That one's not available yet. But they were very upset with me, and for a couple of years they just refused to talk anything decent about me. Recently, when they heard the turmoil I just went through, they did come forward and say, we do have videotapes of it. Here's proof that it works, and yes, Paul Pantone's telling the truth. Yes?
What's going on the candle?
Yes. The day I found out I had zero pollution, we went down and got some candles. And by placing on the original model a special box on the exhaust pipe where we could put the paraffin in, and part of the heat from the exhaust pipe would heat upward into the paraffin so it would drip down into the fuel line. Then we ran the vapor. The beauty of paraffin is a little tiny 1 pound block of paraffin will last you for about a month.
No matter how much you drive.
No, I'm saying for a generator for your home. And it's safe fuel. I mean, you can sit there and eat it.
Dependable enough to run a greenhouse operation?
Oh, yeah.
Rely on?
Yeah. There is no limit to this technology. When I first was selling plans, I didn't tell the general public, guess what, it's a furnace. I wasn't ready to yet. I figured they're having enough trouble seeing the engine run on Mountain Dew. We'll gradually bring them into better things. So in Denver, about 3 years ago, I had sold plans to about 20 people. I took them through a 2-hour training, answered all their questions, told them exactly what they needed for each size vehicle that they purchased it for. Then when I said, now, is everybody happy? And they're all going, yes. I said, good. Now for the bonus of the day. If you take the plans and you tip them this way, it becomes a furnace. He said, what? I said, instead of having an exhaust pipe with a rod through it, you have a chimney with a rod through it. There's no difference. As long as you got hot and cold in opposite directions, you've got your temperature differential, you can make that fit anything for heat energy. You can supply any device with fuel. We've got turbine companies now calling us, jet companies. How fast can you get one on this? How fast can you? Send me an engine, send me the budget I need to put it on there, I'll do it immediately. So I don't even want to do that. I'm telling a lot of them, why don't you come in for training, then go back with your men and put it on your own equipment. You know your equipment better than I do. Then I'll give you a license to manufacture, produce, and let's get it out there. And they're all sitting there going, that sounds good to me. That sounds good to me. How big a license do you want? Well, make me a reasonable offer. If it's reasonable, we'll accept it immediately. If it isn't, I'll say, no, thank you. I'm making them think a little. But I've also shocked the heck out of them with the licenses. I've got a few provisions in there that I threw in that have put them in shock. Venue will be Salt Lake City, if there's any dispute. The way we settle a dispute is we open the phone book up and we pick 5 different businesses at random. And we get 5 different business owners who don't know each other, that have been successful for 10 years or more, to come in and base their decisions strictly on moral issues, not business, which will help mankind more. Now, if you still aren't happy with that decision, you want to fight me some more, the next one is, for every dollar you're willing to spend on your attorney, you have to give me 2 in advance so I can hire a better attorney. If you, wait a minute, what's this? I said, I don't want to ever go to court again. Neither do we. Great place then. Not one person that has seen that type of a contract has hesitated on signing it real quick, because they know I'm not going to sue them. Problems don't belong in courtrooms. They need to be worked out with people. And I'm trying to break away from that system as hard as I can. I don't want the money being earned up there in Canada to come down here. I want to help the people up there. If they're going to clean their country up, they should benefit from it. I'll invest my money I earn up there in Canada. I'm going to invest in this country. But I'll invest in each country on the same basis that it's supporting me. So there's a lot of different things about this company that unless you understood why I'm doing what I'm doing as far as from 1975 till now, would not make sense to most normal businessmen. But I don't want more than I was told I'm entitled to, and that's a tithing. So when people come to me saying, well, yeah, how about we split the profits here, 40-60? No, that won't work. Oh, 50-50? No, that won't work. I get 10%, that's it. What? That's unheard of. Well, that's good. They're not used to that. But who needs more than that? The projections that we had that we just ran on the computer before I came down here, based on the 150 people that called for schooling, we figured by the end of the year we might be able to hit somewhere around 10, 15 million a week in sales. Now hearing that it's about 20 times bigger than I thought it was from a week ago, I don't really have any clue what it's going to be like in 1 year. Not a clue. But I have a feeling the next time I hold a conference, it's going to be with about 250 to 300 company reps from all over the world. I want to do it in a nice, cool place, though. What time is the wedding? At 4? Okay, we have 10 more minutes. Are there questions? No questions. Yes.
How long is the office line stock?
Until the first $1 million is raised. If that's this afternoon or tomorrow, that's when it's over. So it's available right now. We've had 2 people that were here that had to fly home, one to Maine, the other up to Canada. Both of them wanted to buy some. They're going to get back in touch with me later today by phone. They said, well, we can't get money until at least Monday. I said, as long as I know you're going to get the stock, if it takes a couple of days, I understand. I'm trying to get commitments so that by this next Wednesday and Thursday, I have every tool I need in that school. Because I only have 1 week to get that thing ready. And like I said, with the numbers growing as fast as they are, I have no idea how many sets of tools I'm going to need. There's going to be a lot of product going through. But if we take in just 15 the first week, I also have to buy 15 generators, 15 lawnmowers, 15 cars have to be there, 15 furnaces have to be there, 15 semis have to be there. I need some product. Yes?
Where's the school located?
Salt Lake City.
What if you drive our own vehicle?
A lot of people coming to the school are going to be coming up in their own vehicles so they can retrofit it right there at school. I don't have a problem with that. But for anybody who flies in who doesn't have their own vehicle there, we will have other vehicles available. We have customers from all over the country that are willing to drive in, leave the car there for a week, come back and get it geeted up. So, no, we've got plenty of volunteers in those areas.
What else did Mrs. Cunningham tell you that you can tell us?
Whoa. Good Lord, it was an hour and a half. And it was rapid fire from her. It was just one thing after another.
What's the end of it? What did she tell you was going to happen at the end?
If I was doing God's work, I would have a nice long life and a very prosperous company. She said that it would pull people together. She told me I was never to carry a Bible. Actions speak louder than words. I would help all of humanity. I will not judge a man by his faith or his color. I was to make it absolutely clear that all people will be helped. I was told not to attend any organized religion. I was told not to attend any government situations. I would turn my back to all governments and go to the people. And that the Muslims, the Buddhists, the Hindus, all of them will accept you. And I've had that acceptance. Many times we've had people from different countries that have called in and say, may Allah be with you. The gentleman I met with from OPEC, they had mentioned that may Allah put petals from roses before your feet. I don't need this. I just want to get the product out there. Yes, all over the world. Well, if you want to sign up to come up and go through the training program, I have the forms. They'll be out at my booth. The training is $1,500 for the week. At the end of the week, you'll know how to put it on equipment. If you want to be a state distributor, we do have some states available. Yes?
Are there any problems with getting the full horsepower on using this for acceleration such as that?
Yes and no. What are you running on? If you're running on just gas, you're going to be right at about 90% of normal power unless you put a pump in. If you throw in a turbo pump, you're going to end up getting a tremendous amount of power.
Like a supercharger, you mean?
Yeah. We've got one guy who has a monster truck in Southern California there, Los Angeles area. And he put my system on his truck with a supercharger. And I told him, and I'll tell everybody here, if you're going to put a pump system on there to increase the velocity going into the engine, do it with a rheostat so you can control it from your gas pedal. Don't just put an on-off switch, because he put his on and off switch to that pump, took it out to the track, and revved it up, dropped it in gear, and just as he was letting out that clutch, he flipped the switch and turned on the turbo. He said it sounded like a can opener coming up through the floorboard of the car. And he looked down, and there was a hole about this big where it used to be hooked to a drive line. Then he heard it going clinkety, 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 and he looked over, and the drive line was flopping like this as it went up and over the bleachers. And it went all the way over the bleachers. He said, Paul, don't put on turbo boosters. He says, I have to have a roll cage around the drive line. He says, if there would have been people in those bleachers, he says, I would have taken out 40 or 50 people. We've had people that have ripped the trannies completely out of bikes, motorcycles, go-karts. We got one guy in Florida, no, I'm sorry, Texas, that 3 years ago he put the turbo booster on his lawnmower, 10 horsepower riding lawnmower. But he takes off across the yard there, putting along, and his wife's watching him from the front door there. And all of a sudden, he turns the turbo booster on, and the lawnmower goes straight up in the air and takes off. He's laying flat on the ground looking up. Another gentleman down in Texas, he was doing that to his rototiller. And he's got this little 5-horse or 7-horse engine on there. Throws the turbo switch, which is controlled by a little motorcycle battery, to a pump. Throws that thing on, and he is being drugged across the yard. He finally had to let go of it. He couldn't keep up with it and couldn't get to it to shut it down. So here he is being pulled across the yard, and this guy's wife was fixing dinner, looking out the kitchen window at the time. And she says, it just went right through the front yard, right through the rose bushes until it hit the concrete and blew up.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
That might improve your performance?
Yes.
The trouble with a turbo of the types that I'm familiar with is there's a slight delay. And when I want full power, I want it right now, not with a slight delay when the turbo speeds up. Could you put a tank on there with pressure and have it in there right away if you need power to get out of the way of another car that's going to hit?
I've just, on some of the older models, I just take a little squirrel cage fan. And that is all it took. And that with a rheostat on there, and you can pump all the fuel through there you want. For many years as a carpenter, I would drive my dad and some of my friends totally nuts. One day I was working on his trailer, and he had had a maid there the day before that was a little heavy. And when she went down the back steps, it broke one of the steps, which were 1.25 inch plywood. So he asked me to fix the step. When he came home that day from work, he'd only been gone 8 hours. When he came home that day from work, he heard me out in the backyard and came out to see what I was doing. I don't know if I have it in this book or the other one. No, it's in the other photo book I have in the other room. But when he came out, I had built a redwood deck for him for a back porch. No two pieces of wood matched. It started out here as a 2x2, grew to a 2x3, went around the corner, and then I did scrolls for the handles going down. And it starts out as a 2x2, turns into a 2x3, turns into a 2x4, into a 2x6, with no joints visible on it. He steps out, he's looking, what the heck have you done this time? Well, the floor was little tiny blocks of redwood, 3.5 by 7 inch, routed out on the edges, oiled out real nice, so they look like brick. Didn't look like redwood. So he steps out and he's looking around, and he looks up, and I had taken a 2x12 to be the corner post to hold the new roof up. And I had routed it out in all different directions, all the way to the top. But the very top of it was my hand holding up the upper beam. I have a sense of humor. When my wife and I first got together, we moved into a nice 3-bedroom place. Needed a lot of work. But it was out in the desert. Nothing around made me feel happy and alive there. It was like, I want to liven the place up. So I took a section of wall about that big, and we painted it from floor to ceiling with the most beautiful mural that looked like a mountain setting, with a pond in the front of it, with waterfall going all the way to the floor. For 2 weeks I looked at that after it was done, going, yeah, it's really pretty, but it's not done. Wait, I know what's wrong. I'll tear the floor out, paint the floor to look like a lawn with the rest of the pond. So I did. I got down on grass on, painted little stepping stones across the lawn. So when you walk in my kitchen and dining room, it was a 22-foot long mural. People would come in, look down at the floor. Wow. What? I do things like that to make me happy. In the bathroom, my wife was going to put up some real pretty curtains for the shower. And I looked at the fabric, and I said, you know, I haven't seen a paisley print like that in a long time that's that pretty. Go get 4 more yards of it. She said, for what? It's the floor. You're going to put fabric on the floor? I said, of course, honey. It'll look great. So I filled the sink up, took all the vinyl out of there, sanded it all down, took some Elmer's glue in hot water, painted the floor with Elmer's glue in hot water. After I gave it 3 coats, I put some more hot water and Elmer's glue in the sink, dipped all the fabric in there, smoothed it out onto the floor. As soon as it was dry, I went in there and varathaned it. It's damn near bulletproof now. You can't hurt the floor. But when you walk in, you can have anything you want as a floor that looks beautiful. I've done that with kitchen counters. I went out and split firewood for a living one day. And I say one day because it was supposed to be a 2-week job. Came home at the end of that first day and, oh, geez, walking hurt. My shoulders were killing me. But the deal was I could have 1/3 of the fire cutting if I took it.
Is it on? No, this picks up both. Oh, you might want to plug that in. Does it work? Are you rocking? Are you roll? Okay. How's the level? I'm not going to talk really loud though because he's still talking. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm still talking. I'm not talking. I don't want to talk really loud. Paul is still talking. Going to be very. Okay.
Change the shot to me, knock that between them all again.
Is it not working at all? Is it working? Is it on? Can you hear? No. Hello? Are you going crazy? Okay.
Installing a meter. He said, well, that's how we've done it for 100 years. That's how many people get hurt doing it. Yeah. Flash breaks, get electrocuted, cut your hand. Why don't you? There will be by tomorrow. I went and gave 5 different styles of meter installing. Tested them all over. I couldn't find anybody in the industry with it. Instead, they paid $250,000 claim. After 1975, when that woman told me all the things I was to do, the thing I wanted to do was I the best way to do it this way. I took a challenge one day. A contractor said he could outbuild anybody in the area, and I laughed at him. I said, bull. I said, I can frame a house from concrete, have it all framed, ready for a roof, and be done with it in one day. And he laughed. I said, how much you want to bet? He said, how big a crew? I said, fine. So I'll bet you a case of the best whiskey there is. I said, okay, you're on. Things I'm doing will be Thanksgiving. House, sided, painted, trimmed, ready for trusses. None of those people helping me had ever built a house before. Only one of them had experience in swinging a hammer. Totally inexperienced people. They didn't know. Had I had carpenters standing there, they would have stood there and argued with me. Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. Bull. Do what you're told. Well, he knew that I didn't get the lumber until the day before Thanksgiving. He knew it was at a certain location. The following morning, we get in there, get the job done. We got all the walls up. And I called him up Thanksgiving evening and said, yeah, we're done. He said, bull. I said, no, we're done. He went in there. He says, well, the deal didn't include painting it and insulating it. I said, oh, it's also pre-drilled for electrical. He said, how did you do it? I said, before you open the door, use your head. You mark one side. Once at once. Instead of having to pull a tape measure out 500 times. Well, that makes sense. I don't even have to go on a ladder to mark the top plate. It's already done. Why don't they do that at the mill when it's coming out of the mill? Because they didn't want to pay Paul Pantone 1 penny per unit of lumber, to use my idea. That's all I asked. They weren't interested. So I do my own thing all the time. But as the boards come out, 2x4s go in place, the header gets dropped in, everything's done flat on the ground. The ground area you're working in is consistent, it's level, it's squared, everything's done there. Then as soon as that wall's done, you slide the plywood right over it. You've got your craft paper, pulls off of a little roller. You don't have to fight the wind with craft paper. As soon as the craft paper is down, the plywood goes on, it's all nailed off. The girl comes right behind you with a little roller, and she's painted the wall in a nice flat position. She's not dumping paint anywhere, it's all going on those boards. Then you roll the wall down till it dries. As they're building the next wall section, she goes back and gives it a second coat. As soon as she's done with that, if there's a window or door in it, the window gets dropped in, trimmed out, stands up. As it's standing up, she comes back over and she reaches up and grabs the insulation, pulls it down, staples it, cuts the top. It's on another pipe. So this roll of insulation can slide back and forth, so it's easy. Everything I did, I streamlined. But I took 6 different jobs in that building that normally would be done by all these other people, turned it all into one. It was streamlined, no waste. When we were done framing that house, we had 2 small boxes, that's it, of firewood. Everything else was usable. So if people think one step beyond where they are instead of doing it in the same rut they always have, they can see things like this. I've had a couple of businessmen here this weekend. We are not going to make any money off the school. I mean, $1,500 for a week and all the time it's going to take you, and by the time you... I said, wait a minute. The guy comes in, he's paying me $300 a day to be in my school. Okay, that's a reasonable amount for what he's going to learn. In the meantime, I'm going to have him a lawnmower there. And when he finishes that, I take that to my store and I sell it. I made another 100. Then he's going to do a generator. When he's done, I take that to my store and I make another 500. Then he puts it on a furnace. I take that out, I make another 1,500. Then he puts it on a car. I make another 1,800. Then he puts it on a semi. I made 7,000 that day. So yeah, the school's going to pay off. It'll have the capital immediately to expand at whatever the rate is that people want to come in. But each person going through that school is going to go home with a knowledge that isn't in the science book, that is wanted in every part of the world. We started, one professor in Salt Lake City started teaching at the community college. 1 week later, they heard about what he was teaching in his classroom, and they called him to the main office and said, "What are you doing?" And he explained it to them. They came down and they looked at the little engines he was building, and lo and behold, they do run on Mountain Dew and pickle juice. Okay, we don't want you here at the college anymore. We want you down at the prison. We need to rehabilitate prisoners so when they come out of prison, they're not coming back. And what could be better than training them for GEET? A good, high-paying job that anywhere in the world they want to go, they got a job, guaranteed. Any man going out of my school right now, if he doesn't want to open his own shop up, all he has to do is say, "Paul, you know, I'd kind of like to live in Florida or maybe Texas. I've got a dealer in every state. All you got to do is tell me where you want to live. I'll call him up and say, we've got a man here, he's trained, he can do this, this, and this. Do you want him or not?" And every state dealer I know of right now in country dealer is going to say yes. When? Because they can't get the people here fast enough. So it is an opportunity. If you do want to do, we've got one guy right now who's come in for his training. He went back to Oregon. He's getting loaded up sometime here in the next few months, and he's going off to Tahiti and all the islands. He's going to represent GEET generators for every one of those islands. He's going to go in and retrofit all of their equipment so it'll run on 80% salt water. He's going to be busy. But he wanted to sail around the world and just enjoy life. And he saw this saying, this is a gold mine. I'm going to be a hero in every port I stop. But we also need people out there that are just in the boating business. That's all they want to set. If they want to go out there and play with boats, play with boats. If there's no more questions, we have a wedding supposed to start in just a few minutes. any of you who do want to sign up, forms are up here.
Take 2 days to get $25,000 truck.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
So,
If you'll write down your name and all that. And
I do have
Now
to
you-
discuss it with my wife, but
okay. Yeah, we just had another guy say that a few minutes ago.
I hate to
I
come
understand.
across as henpecked, but you know how
Oh,
it
no,
is.
no, 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 no. No. When you do things like this without asking, and you love your wife, it can turn into a battle. Oh. I have left that out from almost all my other presentations. But there were 2 people here that did ask me about that earlier. So I figured at this point I'd share it.
I came here from, I'm on my vacation. I was driving down from Chicago to Lake Havasu. I just drove from 5 o'clock in the morning. And I stopped in near Sedona. Drove to Pam Golden. She's got those lights. Lights, and I was coming here to just for you because it's the last day I can do it. I got you on internet. I found about you. I'm in an association for electric cars. We're building
Yes.
our own kits. And there is a guy named Don Weir. He knows you personally. You know yours. So that's why I got the information. I'm interested in your.
Okay.
I
So
will be attending school, but not right away.
good.
I am interested in distribution because he gave me the name of the distributor in Illinois.
Yes.
And I could not get hold of this person, neither does he. For whatever
If you'll write your name on my yellow pad at my booth. Oh, you have it there. Okay.
I've been working in body parts for 30 years. I've been on cars for long enough. And I'm done doing body because I had operations on both knees, both shoulders, from swinging the hammer and
Yeah.
building frames and everything. I'm real estate. I need going to know because from
Yes.
body man to real estate, I would like to stay in the industry that I was sort of me. And this is a good opportunity, but right now I'm on vacation. So
That's fine.
I have to go back. My wife and my kid are still in Lake Havasu, so we have to drive back to Chicago eventually in 4 or 5 days. So I would like to talk to you about investing. You're saying $1 million, it's over. I can't go home and write you a check because I'm on vacation. So I will have the money to raise to give you the 10,000 shares, whatever you say.
Well, this is what the other gentleman's doing too. It was just here.
And I would be interested in learning how to do this, so I can maybe open up even a lawnmower shop or whatever. I don't
Yes.
know. What, can I sign up for?
Sure.
And, I'll leave this with your pad at the, can I give this to you?
I will take care of that.
Question for
Yes.
you. Accepting credit card orders and your
Yes.
plans? Okay. So it's like, boy, how am I going to come up with money? Okay, you made it easy.
I take credit cards for everything. If somebody, we have one investor who called in, he wants to buy some shares in the company. He said, well, I can't do it unless I can do it on my American Express. I said, I don't give a damn. We'll use American Express.
Great,
It works for me.
great. I really would like to attend your school.
Let me get out of the room here so they have their
Can you
room.
take credit card on that too?
Oh, yeah.
Consider.
I just had a passing thought. I just wondered if Carnival Cruises,
Uh-huh.
do you really benefit somebody like that?
Oh, yeah.
Or do you think the oil company already?
They've already contacted us. They're the company that does all their maintenance.
Okay.
They replace all the engines and everything. They were supposed to fly in here with A.J. Foyt and Roger Penske about 3 or 4 weeks ago. We had to postpone it. So I'm going to hold off on that till I'm done with Jay Leno. Because by then the price of everything is going to be triple again.
Paul, let me help you with some of this here. Paul, I was thinking about running on candles.
Yep.